We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. We're here on a Tuesday evening. Things went crazy this morning. What happened, Tom?
I got a nice big glass of water. You know where it is?
Oh, yes.
Other side of that door.
You'll have an opportunity. I'm sure I'll prattle on at some point to go grab it.
My throat is already dry, Rob. I'm parched.
Don't cough. You'll send everyone into a panic.
Oh, yeah. So my foreign exchange student came back from Hawaii on Sunday morning after flying for a bajillion hours, and she's been coughing nonstop ever since she got back. Of course.
Everybody always does on every plane ride ever.
I know, poor thing. So she's just she was a sick mess when she got back. 2 hours of sleep over something like 48 hours or something. It was ridiculous. 36 hours maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Trying to get that back on track. This is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask us by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Go to avrant.com, leave us a comment there, facebook.com/avrantpodcast, youtube.com/avrant. Contact Rob directly at rob@avrant.com. His Twitter is @firstreflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. My Twitter is @avrant_Tom. My energy levels are at an all-time low
all
right
time.
now. So usually I can kind of like psych myself up for the podcast. And every once in a while we get an email from somebody that's like, oh, Tom sounds bleh all the time. I'm like, listen, I don't get to choice. And neither does Rob, really. We don't get choices as to when we can do this podcast. There's a limited window of opportunity where both Rob and I are free. And it's a couple of days a week, a couple of times during those days. And if one doesn't work out, that limits us from like 3 options to 2. And if the second one doesn't work out, then we're either looking for somebody to fill in or something else. So, I'm sorry that, we're not able to cocaine me up enough to get me, hyped for every single one, but that's not the lifestyle I lead. So this is what you get. You get real Tom. It's been almost a dozen years of doing this, and I'm not going to be 100% every single time. So believe me, Rob and I will continue to talk about AV, even if we're not talking to you people at the same time. We've been doing it long enough that while I can't honestly say that we've ever met in person, because that would be a lie.
It would be.
And he's still one of my best friends, so there's just no chance that this relationship is ever going to go anywhere in the long term, other than being friendly forever. So to think that me being cranky one day is somehow indicative of me being angry at Rob. Think of it more like Daddy had a bad day at work. Maybe Daddy needs a scotch before we talk to Daddy. And think of that, instead of a bad day, I've got 3 teenagers. So, well, 2.5 teenagers. Well, actually, I'm sorry, 3.5 teenagers if you count the foreign exchange student. So, yes. Let's start with our listeners of the week. When we listeners of the week, we like to mention those people who've supported the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. That will send you to a PayPal donation site, and we'll take your PayPal information or your credit card if you'd like to donate sort of anonymously. I mean, I guess it's anonymous. I don't know who any of you people are. But we want to thank David for doing that. So thank you very much, David.
That's Davide. You don't remember Davide from last week? Davide. I
do remember that, but you know what? I never looked at his actual name. I looked at the pronunciation.
It comes up later on, but we didn't put pronunciation here at the top in amongst our listeners of the week. So yes, Davide, thank you very much for your PayPal donation. It is appreciated.
I do like saying that, though. I do.
Oh, that's nice.
I do, Davide. I do like saying that. It looks too much like David, though. But for my stupid American eyes, so whatever. It's like 75,000 degrees in this room. And we also want to thank our 110. That's right, 110.
It's a new milestone, I'll call it.
New milestone of Patreon.
New Patreon decade, in effect.
That's where it's going to go. So 110 patrons over at patreon.com. Patreon's is a subscription service where you subscribe to your content creators of choice. If you choose us, you can subscribe for $1 a month minimum, and then as many other dollars on top of that as you choose. So thank you to our 110 patrons, including Absorptive Cat PJ.
Yep.
If you remember, PJ sent us a picture of his home theater with a big old cat in the middle of it. So I made a joke about how absorptive it was, and now it's stuck. We want to thank Gib as well for increasing his monthly donation. And he said the infinity button was out of reach, but he did increase it. So we thank you, Gib. Thank you very much.
Definitely.
And Jason, who says he's a new patron who found us a couple of months ago and wishes he had known about us sooner. We also wish that, Jason.
It's very appreciated. Thank you to our 110 patrons. It's patreon.com/AVRant podcast. If you'd like to sign up, you can think of it as a completely voluntary subscription because we don't have tiers or prizes or anything at all. We're just like, some people said, hey, why aren't you on Patreon? We're like, yeah, I guess we can do that. And it took us about 4 months to actually make a Patreon account.
All my fault. 100%.
All the effort you've ever seen is over there. No, but it's appreciated very much. PJ, Gib, and Jason, thank you all very much for your support on Patreon.
And if you're a patron and want to be mentioned, just send us an email and say, hey, I'm a patron. Why don't you mention me? And we will.
Yep.
I mean, if you say send us an email every week, we'll probably at some point block you. But before, no,
I don't think so. I'll mention you every week. Happy to do it.
Happy to do it. We don't care. Ken, so if you can't support us financially, which is fine, and I completely understand, because not everybody's in the same place, either financially or emotionally, where they want to do that. I completely understand that. So, but if you can support us in some way, I don't know, tell a friend about the podcast. You know, Jason was looking for somebody to tell him for months, apparently. So, or something else, let us know what you've done and we'll mention you. So Ken bought the monoprice HT35 5.1 speaker package and a small Pile 5-channel amplifier we suggested for his computer setup. Unfortunately, even after quite a bit of back and forth with Rob via email and emailing both Pile and NVIDIA for support, Ken was unable to get his computer to recognize the Pile amplifier as anything other than a 2-channel stereo-only audio device via HDMI. So he replaced it with a Marantz Slimline receiver instead. He let Accessories for Less know that we sent him their way, and he also sent Rob an Amazon gift card for all of his trouble. So thank you very much, Ken. More people should actually send Rob gift cards. Just in general. I feel like that's just true. Just skip going through the PayPal and me to get the money to Rob.
Not necessary at all, but very appreciated, Ken. Thank you very much. The Amazon gift card was not expected, but a very nice surprise. Thank you for that. And I apologize that the Pile 5-channel amplifier didn't work as I had hoped. I haven't used it personally. Found that device, thought that it might suit his needs, and to be fair, if you have something like a Blu-ray player where you can set it to 5.1 channel PCM output, it does work with that, but for whatever reason, computer just would not detect it as anything other than 2-channel only, which of course defeated the purpose of wanting a 5-channel surround sound amplifier. So glad that the Marantz Slimline does work out. It's a little bit wider than he had hoped for, but it was compact enough that it worked. Plus, now he gets full bass management, room correction, all the lovely things. Yeah.
And whenever we deal with computers, this is always one of the thorns that are on the side of that path. You never know when you're going to veer off into my drivers don't like each other.
And actually, Ken discovered while he was researching his own, he says, there are other people talking about other amplifiers, specifically with NVIDIA graphics cards via their HDMI ports, where it doesn't detect the correct number of channels. I'm like, it's a driver issue. There's probably some janky, who knows where it came from driver out there that makes it work, but didn't want to deal with it. Marantz solved all the problems.
Yeah.
Good to go.
So Chris went with the Aperion Intimus 4 series speakers for his bedroom that we recommended to replace his Mica speakers. He is loving them, and he talked us up to Aperion. So thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
And Lee, not our Lee, but a different Lee, told Aperion Audio on Twitter that he bought speakers from them based on our recommendation. So thank you very much, Lee. I hope you're enjoying those Aperion Audio speakers.
Definitely. So I think what Tom needs to do is buy products and then replace them with something else, and then what he just replaced, suddenly everyone's like, oh, Tom doesn't have them anymore. I'm going to go buy some. Seems to be what's going on.
If you people, and by you people, I mean you manufacturer out there, every 6 months with a cycle new speakers through
there
here,
you
knock
go.
yourselves out, dude.
There you go.
I don't know. I do not keep the boxes. So if you want me to send them back, you got to send me new boxes.
Tom replaces his brand new SVSs with Ascend. Suddenly SVS speakers just boom in sales.
There you go. Redbox, in the news here. Redbox is offering Ultra HD Blu-ray rentals from their kiosks in 15 cities. For Tom's, that the closest would be Miami. Or
yes.
I could just go to Target and buy up myself for about what I would pay in gas alone.
Yep.
They're charging $2.50 per night versus $2 for Blu-ray and $1.75 for DVD. So, hey, could be you.
Yep.
It could be out there.
I mean, it was large cities, obviously, that they're going for. So
right, sure, I understand that.
If you were
Tampa's
in a large city, yeah.
We're
that was
large.
the only Florida I saw was Miami, and I don't think anywhere is going to be closer in a state outside. I don't think New York is closer to you than Miami. So, yeah.
Yeah, I honestly do not care one bit about Ultra HD Blu-rays because most of the time, there's still a lot of Atmos on the Blu-ray version, and even when it doesn't have Atmos, it does the upmixing just fine. So
yeah.
I'm fine. It's not worth it to me. But if I buy it, then I am looking for Atmos. If I'm not buying it, then whatever. Some comments here from some listeners. Francis wanted to give a shout out to a Bright Side Home Theater podcast. Woo, competitor.
Very different topic. Well, not very different, but.
I was going to say it's got home theater in their name. So, anyways, it's hosted by an AVRant listener. DJ is his name. Francis is enjoying it a lot, so he's glad we mentioned it, and he's happy to find one more fan of 3D out there. So cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
I mean, I think when I first started this podcast a bajillion years ago, there was like podcasts would like snipe each other and try to take other podcasts down in order to get viewers and stuff like that. And I had a couple of podcasts that were interested in doing like collaborations, and I sort of stayed away from all of it. But we were that was the first couple of months even. I mean, it was that early. I didn't really want to get into all that. But now that we're kind of established and we're doing our own thing, I really don't feel competition with anybody.
It seems to me that people who start listening to podcasts only tend to look for even more podcasts to listen to. It doesn't seem to be competitive to me at all. The largest market by far are people who aren't listening to any podcasts at all. That's who needs to be reached.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about pilfering from someone else.
If we help another podcast get one more viewer,
that's right.
I even if that's expense of one of our viewers, our listeners or whatever, I'm fine with that. So good on you, Francis, and thank you, DJ, for being a listener as well. And Brightside Home Theater Podcast. I've never listened to it. I'm sure it's fantastic. Gurinder wrote in to say he didn't suck the tweeter. Oh man, we even named the podcast after that.
We did.
I feel like you have to now. But he did use a bit of tape to lightly pull out the tweeter that his son had pushed in, and that was fine. He really didn't notice any difference in the sound either way, which is exactly what I would expect. Like we said, the only real issue that you could possibly think is that wherever it was bent might have gotten a little bit of a weakness, and then there might be some ringing or something because of that, but it would be...
Most soft dome tweeters are fine.
Would not worry about that. Right. Dan C. Last week, Dan asked about the Ultra HD deep color setting for his LG OLED, plus the enhanced 4K setting, signal setting for his Denon receiver, as well as his PS4 Pro HDR settings, because he wasn't getting any picture at all unless he turned all that stuff off. We said it was probably his HDMI cable, one or both of them. And drum roll, please. It was an HDMI. It was HDMI cable.
It was good.
So yeah, a fairly long copper cable, HDMI cable as well. An active cable got it working, and all the settings were fine. So yay, dude, I so live in your world because I have an HDMI cable on my wall, and it's like 25 feet long, I think, and I just know it's never going to support this stuff. And I'm going to have to get another one, and I'm not opening up my wall. So
because we know Tom is getting that Xbox Series X on day one.
Ooh. Yeah.
and an 8K display to go along with it. I'm certain of it.
An 8K 77-inch OLED.
Oh, it'd have to be the 88. Oh, no, they did make a 77 8K. You're right about that.
Look at that. Tom was accidentally right about something. Nick says our interview with Alan from HT Market convinced him to give them a try. Nick is only 50 miles away from their showroom in Chicago, so making the trip out to try out some of their seats in person is not a problem. Nick had actually been turned off by the Professor HT character that Alan uses in many of the HT Market YouTube videos.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been looking elsewhere for theater recliners, but our interview changed his mind, and as long as the seats are comfortable, it'll save him over $1,000. So he says, thanks. Yeah, man, I 100% agree. I just cannot buy furniture that I haven't sat in. I did it one time, and I regretted it immensely.
Yeah.
So I will never do it again.
No, I'm really happy to hear that. I'm a little bit disappointed that that interview hasn't had a little bit more response. But hey, we definitely know we've helped one person, and Alan is most likely going to be gaining one customer out of this. So that's good. Nick, thank you very much for writing in.
I would be very interested in Nick's opinion.
Yeah,
because he's going to be able to sit on a bunch of stuff.
Yes,
not just the one thing that he's going to buy. Because I think some people might go online and say that looks good. It's got good reviews. Send it to me. So Nick, put your butt in all the chairs. And give us some feedback, man. I'd love to hear it. All right. I guess is this our first question? Is it me? No.
Okay. Well, why not? Let's dig it. I've only got one answer for you.
Yeah, I know, and it's fine because I can tell you the result of that answer.
That'll work then.
So my parents have been bothering me for weeks, possibly a month, or maybe a little bit more than that. That they want to get rid. I have some speakers that I gave them that are self-powered speakers, and even though they're self-powered speakers, they also have a receiver because they needed the switch, and this thing wasn't the speakers weren't HDMI. So they've got some self-powered speakers. They're the Vander Hooch something, I don't remember. I reviewed them a million years ago, and they ended up at my parents' house. They're white, and my parents' house is mostly like light gray or white, so it kind of worked. And then they had the Aperion Audio, the Brabus 2 or whatever it was, subwoofer that they basically turned off at one point and didn't turn it back on. So they have been wanting to get rid of their receiver, get rid of their speakers. They want to have a soundbar, and I think what they talked about putting it on their, they have like a little hutch, I don't know what to call it. It's a piece of furniture. It's not home theater. It's just it has a couple of drawers, and then it's a big open space underneath. All the gear was stacked underneath there. They got their router down there, their DVD or their Blu-ray player, and their cable boxes down there. Then they have an older Samsung Plasma. So I don't remember what model it was. I sent it to you.
You did,
it's a 55-inch or 56-inch. It's one of those weird sizes.
I think it was like a 58 or something like that.
Yeah, it's a weird size. Back in the how long ago this is? This was like I think they spent like $2,600 on this thing. It was nowadays that's like you can get an OLED with like all the bells and whistles, but this is what you could get back when they bought this thing, and they're not getting rid of it anytime soon.
58-inch A650 Samsung Plasma.
A650. Okay, so. Beautiful TV.
Yeah,
it's just really, really nice, but it's got the big old bezel on it and sort of this thing. So they wanted a soundbar. Well, what they wanted was to get rid of the receiver and the speakers, and I was like, okay, so you want a soundbar? They're like, well, we don't know what we want. You tell us. I'm like, you want a soundbar? And so I tasked Rob because I got the inside line on Rob. I said, Rob, I need a soundbar for this thing, and they may end up hanging it. I think they really want to hang it from the bottom of the TV. Okay. That's what they want. They have it on like an articulated mount, so they kind of face it towards wherever they are. And they have this table that's right underneath it. But on top of that table is stuff, and will always be stuff. Like during Christmas, it's the nativity scene, and during other things, it's other Catholic things because they're very, very Catholic. So if I give them a soundbar and I let them put it up there, they're going to put it on the bottom of the table, like on the ground. Right. Which is not going to work. So, I said, hey, Rob, what can you get me? So, Rob, what can you get me?
All right. So.
$500 budget. I told them because I told them, I'm like, listen, what you guys are asking for, because they did not want a bass module. They
didn't want a subwoofer, which was complicating. So lots of caveats in that we wanted something that could play decently without the wireless sub, because most soundbars come with a wireless sub. My first thought when he said this was like Samsung's Q60R soundbar, because actually Samsung right now is making some really decent sounding soundbars. They own Harman now, right? They own the whole Harman group. Harman is working on the soundbars, and they actually sound downright decent. The style is nice. They work nicely, but it has a wireless sub and really sounds thin without it. And also, there's the little bit of issue where, whatever soundbar they're getting, their plasma is old enough that it won't send audio back down other than through an optical audio output, which is limited to stereo only. And one of the things we wanted was really clear dialogue. And I'm like, to get really clear dialogue, you really want an actual center speaker built into the soundbar, not just stereo only with a phantom center. So lots of things to consider. So looking through things, I was like, the Sennheiser one is way out of budget. The Paradigm one is way out of budget.
Well, I warned them. I said, what you guys are asking for, I mean, this would cost $2,000. Because I was thinking the Yamaha,
one of those sound projectors.
The sound projectors.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's $2,000. I mean, to do something with
and
I
like did almost recommend a Yamaha soundbar, the YAS 109 that is out right now, because I mean it'll play down to about 80 hertz, doesn't have any separate subwoofer, but compared to TV speakers, going to be better.
Right,
but
way better.
It was stereo only, like it doesn't have an actual dedicated center and only one HDMI input. So I was like, well, what does Accessories for Less have? Let's check around. Now, normally this thing costs $900, and that is Denon's Hios soundbar. $900 is the normal selling price. It is 3 genuine channels that are in there. It is fairly large mid-bass drivers that are in there. You can add the wireless Hios subwoofer to it, optional if you want to, but this will play down to about 60 hertz even without it. It's got this interesting design where all of the drivers are at an angle. So if you put it on a desk, they're tilted upward a little bit. If you mount it below your TV, they're tilted upward a bit. If you mount it above your TV, they're tilted downward a little bit. And the little Hios logo on the front can actually be rotated so that it looks correct, no matter which way you orient the thing. And importantly, on the back of it, 4 HDMI inputs. Nice. So that's definitely going to work on that front. HDMI pass-through if you end up needing it for the video side. IR blasters on the back of it, so even if it's tall enough that it's blocking the IR receiver in the frame of your television, it'll repeat your IR commands through itself to its IR blasters on the back. So great features. And then, of course, best of all, at Accessories for Less, you can find it for $380 right now, which is underneath the $500 budget. So that is my one and only answer. I'm like, there's nothing else that is going to come close to all of those features for that price.
Right. And I don't know that they need any audio to come down from the TV. I don't really know, but we'll have to see if they end up doing how they use it. But so all they ever use are those as a cable box, usually the cable box and the DVD player, and they rarely use the Blu-ray player. But they also occasionally will hook my dad's computer up to it, or they'll hook up a Chromecast. Sure. So with 4 HDMI inputs is exactly perfect.
Yes. Yeah. And even if they do end up using like the TV's built-in tuner, which is the only way you would get surround sound out of that particular television, the optical port is still available, and that'll work. Right. So
that'll work. So yes, I think they'll be fine. So this is great. Thank you very much, Rob. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
It arrived today. They texted me this afternoon and said that the sound bar is here, and I was like, too busy, leave me alone.
And I mean, it's pretty big. This is not a small little dinky sound bar, so hopefully physically, but I mean, to get good sound, you gotta have some ability to move some air. There's no way around those physics. So.
Well, the fact that it's got the speakers angled up a little bit too could mean that they end up putting it on that lower shelf down there. It won't be quite so bad, but I'll see. Because I kind of envisioned hanging it, mounting it to the TV's mount because it's on the
which you still can do. So that's optional. There's keyhole mounts on the back, an optional bracket that comes with. So
okay, well we'll take a look at it, and I'll let you know. Hopefully by next week. In fact, I'm planning on going over there tomorrow, but we'll see.
Yeah.
My kids have a climbing competition this weekend in Jacksonville, so I may be. And we're going to be gone all weekend, and then next week is spring break, which means my kids are going to be home with me. I won't even get a break from them, Rob. I just have 24/7 kids. All right, let's get into some questions of people other than me. Yeah. So that's a really great find, by the way, that sound bar. So thank you.
I wasn't totally expecting to find it. The reason it's that less expensive is they've just replaced it with a newer model that they haven't actually branded as the Hios bar anymore. It's under the Denon lineup, but of course has Hios built in. And what they've done is they've built in Amazon's voice assistant directly into it. You don't need a separate device anymore. That's like the big feature upgrade, which has pushed the Hios bar down to this wonderful refurbished price that you can get from Accessories for Less. So works out because you know what? I don't think the Amazon voice assistant being built in is going to be the killer feature for your parents. So
no, they have a dot anyways. So they
and it'll work with that
and the harmony and everything. So it works. All right, Scott. Scott would like to get a new projector, but he likes to keep his gear for a long time, so he doesn't want anything that will be obsolete in the near future. He's leaning towards getting a 4K JVC model, but the current models all came out in 2018, and JVC didn't introduce any replacement models in 19, although they did issue that firmware update that added frame-by-frame HDR. So do we think completely new models might be announced at CEDIA 2020? He's totally willing to wait until the end of the year if it means he will get the latest and greatest and most future-proof, but if nothing new is coming, he might as well start shopping now. So what do we say? I absolutely think they're going to introduce something new at CEDIA 2020. Okay. Neither of us has any inside information to tell you.
No, definitely nothing concrete. Don't even know any solid rumor type thing at this point.
No, it's so far away. It's so far away. Do I think it would be worth waiting? Well, honestly, every month you wait, prices come down.
The current ones get cheaper. If new ones are announced, the current ones will only get less expensive than what they are now. So if you can wait, there's essentially no downside other than you're not enjoying your new projector this whole time. Of course, there's that factor. My honest guess is the opposite of Tom's. I suspect we won't see brand new JVC projector models announced this year. I think they will come next year in 2021. That is pure speculation, but I'm kind of looking at the projector market in general has slowed down a bit. Almost all of it has, the newest stuff has been these ultra short throw models or the DLP models where they're moving the DLP panel around a whole bunch of times per frame. That there's been the most movement in that. I'm looking at things like Epson where they held on to that 5040 UB longer than anyone ever expected. It was a much longer before the 5050 UB came out, and when it did, really almost nothing different other than the HDMI ports having been upgraded, which was like the one thing that the 5040 needed. The HDR processing got tweaked a little bit too. These JVC ones, they put a lot of R&D into their 4K liquid crystal on silicon, or DILA chips that they did. My gut feeling is that this is around for one more year. Okay. Because I don't really know what else. We have no idea. I don't really know what else they would upgrade at this point, though, unless they're gonna have that 8K E-Shift model with full HDMI 2.1, because the current RS3000 doesn't have that. So there might be that. Either of us could easily be correct on this thing, as far as I'm concerned.
Both of us could be wrong. They could announce something.
Announce something, but not bring it out until next year?
Well, yeah. It could just be like a firmware update, but only for half the line. The line that's got the most processing power, the higher end stuff. Yeah. And then you're like, oh, should I have gotten this, the NX7 or the... I don't know what the other ones are. X9.
Yeah, I'm almost thinking I don't really know what would be upgraded. If they have whole new panels with higher contrast, but I don't really think that is coming this year. But I could be entirely wrong. So really not very helpful to you, Scott. Pure speculation on our parts here as to what's going to happen on this one, but. Doesn't hurt to start shopping if you find a fantastic deal. It's not like I think you're going to be disappointed with an NX7 in 5 years. It's still going to be a phenomenal looking projector at that point. But if you do wait, prices are only going to go down.
All right. Damien. So first, Damien has an update. So far, Damien's idea to use a box spring as his seating riser is working out well. He put 2 pieces of OSB on top to make it a proper surface and then cover the whole thing with a black fitted sheet because it is a bed.
I like that, actually. That's clever.
It's interesting. So it's inexpensive and it works. And if you don't look too closely at it, which nobody will, they're not going to really recognize what it is. And plus, the lights are always off. So
it's under your feet.
Yeah. So you bought a refurbished 5040 UB. It's a huge upgrade over his white van $100 projector. He spent a little extra for the Peerless brand ceiling mount that we recommended. It was incredibly easy to set up, so that all went well.
Yay.
He's noticed a spot in the Epson's image. It's hard to see unless the screen is close to all black and nothing is moving, but there's definitely a splotch being projected. He emailed Epson, is waiting on the response, and he thoughts it's a speck of dust inside your panel, or between your panel and your lens, or whatever. It's in there
somewhere in the light path. That absolutely looks like the the prototypical green dust blob. That is exactly what people describe.
I have yet to have a projector that hasn't had at least one of those. They always end up with one eventually.
Yeah, well, LCD projectors do not have a sealed light path. It is possible for a little speck of dust to get in there that absolutely looks like what it is now. Since you just bought this thing, and Epson is really good about exchanges and returns, I
would be surprised if they haven't already done this, if he was waiting on response. Yeah.
That's right. Totally the possibility that they'll just exchange it for you. But if they don't, not all is lost. It can be cleaned, but I would recommend to anybody, please don't try to do it yourself. If you try to just blow compressed air in where the filter is, you're only going to make it so much worse. You will not blow out the one speck of dust. You will blow in many, many more. But it is possible to have it professionally cleaned. That can be done. So if Epson writes back to you and says, sorry, nothing we can do for one speck of dust, but get them to tell you, okay, where's the authorized repair place near me that can do the cleaning? Because it isn't like there's no way to possibly fix this.
Yeah, I have in the past looked into this. I think the last time I looked into it, I was in Australia, and I called around. I wasn't able to find anybody who was willing to do it. But depending on where you live and or where the nearest metropolis is, your mileage may vary on this. But it's certainly worth looking into. Honestly, dude, it's one little speck. You see it at the very beginning of the movie, and you see it at the very end, and that's the only time you'll ever see it, because any sort of light, any sort of movement on the screen, it goes away immediately. You can't see it.
And in case anybody's like, oh, it's because he bought refurbished, it's like, nah, I've seen this on brand new. It's bad luck of the draw. We're sorry that it happened to you, but it isn't even just because it's a refurbished thing. That brand new ones, I've seen it. So
yeah. So he's been using a 100-inch roll-down screen that won't roll back up anymore that he got for free. And he liked a proper screen to go with his new Epson. He's currently sitting at 10 feet, and we have to remember that he has the door on the left of his screen and a front left speaker, so he has limited space. He was thinking of a 120-inch might be nice, but that 110-inch would fit more easily, and you could scooch his seats just a few inches forward if need be. But if he's willing to pay more, there are the super thin bezels, frames, and this front wall is painted matte black. So does he stick with the silver ticket white screen? Does he go for 110 or 120? And does he go regular bezel or thin bezel? All right, so this is quite literally, who cares? But because all of these are a possible solution. If you're asking me, I get the cheaper one and I move my seats forward. That's what I do because I'm cheap. That's what I am. I would not spend more on a super thin bezel just so I can get a little bit more out of it and not have to move my chairs. I mean, if you got the super thin bezel and you got the big one and you move your chairs forward, well then, okay. Then you've made some sense to me. But I would go with the cheaper one and just move your chairs forward a few inches.
Yeah, not only that, even if you stay exactly at 10 feet, funnily enough, if you went for the 45-degree field of view that I always recommend, from exactly 10 feet away, it would land you right in the middle. You'd want a 114-inch diagonal screen, bang in the middle of 110 to 120, basically, to get the 45-degree field of view. So with a 110-inch screen, to get a 45-degree field of view would not be difficult at all. You're literally talking moving like 2-3 inches closer if you even care to do that. However, if you are one of the people who likes a much larger field of view, well then, of course, there's only so much you can do about that. But yeah, in the case of Silver Ticket, I would definitely stick with a Silver Ticket white screen. I mean, nobody else's is down that low at that good performance. Going to the super thin bezel that they offer does double the price. Now, we're talking going from like $200 to $400, so even the $400 price is still lower than most other manufacturers' screens, but it's like $200 for the 110-inch with the normal frame, and it'll fit, and the viewing angle should be fine. So I have to agree here. The cheaper option, the slightly smaller size, everything works out in your favor.
Oh, I was going to say lastly, but it's not lastly.
Not quite.
There are suggested settings available online from a lot of places. Do we have one that we recommend, and how does he determine which lamp mode to use? Yeah,
so for the 5040 UB, I suggest going with the settings that are listed at Projector Reviews. So they have a review. They have a review of the Pro Cinema 6040 UB, but it's identical in performance and settings to your 5040 UB. There is a little bit of a catch, which is that if you go to their settings section, which is I'll have a direct link for that at avrant.com and in the show notes for this episode. You basically have to scroll past all the text and go down to the photos at the bottom because they updated their settings, but they only updated the photos. They didn't rewrite the whole settings section.
Nice.
So that's the trick there. Scroll all the way down to the bottom. There's a whole slideshow of photos that take it through. They have day mode, night mode, HDR mode, which is everything that you'll need to cover. And the trick there is that for the night mode, surprisingly, the natural picture preset comes the closest out of the box. So not always going to expect that to be the case, but if you just go through the slideshow, those are the settings that I would recommend following.
So he mounted the Epson 17 feet from the screen. That gives him a very large selection of screen size options with his expected 110 to 120 right in about in the middle of the zoom range. But now he needs a larger HDMI cable, about 35 feet or so. That's long enough that he should go for an active HDMI cable, correct? Which do we recommend? I don't know that you need active at 35. I mean, when you get up closer to 50 is when you need active,
well,
sure.
50 is where I would start to transition to fiber optic.
Oh, fiber optic.
Yeah.
Which is also active.
I mean, everywhere up to 15, you should be fine with just a regular copper premium HDMI. I say up to about 25 feet may be the top that I would go with that. After that, I probably want to go active.
I think my brain is still stuck on Blu-ray about HD. That's why I thought 50 was okay.
Yeah, no, he's getting the whole HDR, and then well, he doesn't do 4K 60 at HDR, so he probably won't need the full 18 gigabits per second. But nevertheless, 35 feet to me is long enough that I would want active. Now, I would say you spend about $12 to $14 more to get the Blue Jeans cable active one. It's their Series 3 active. Yes, you can get even cheaper from Monoprice, but like when it comes to this, I'm like, just get the Blue Jeans. They got a 40-foot one for $74, which is not insane.
Yeah,
you know, it's not so much more that you're like
almost half the size of the screen. We're suggesting half the price of the screen.
True, yeah.
Hey, but that seems reasonable, right? You're like, what's going on?
I trust Blue Jeans implicitly when it comes to HDMI cables, and to me, the few dollars extra in this case, just spend it.
So at the moment, all of his gear is in the stand at the front of his room below his screen, but it's getting crowded. Should he consider putting the equipment rack somewhere else in his room and going through the hassle of rewiring everything? Or should he maybe just get a larger stand at for the front of his room? Well, how much of a hassle is it? And how much are you going to save in... because that, to me... And when I say save in costs, your time... costs something.
Yes.
It costs something to do this. So putting together new furniture, switching everything into the new furniture is not zero cost. It is, the furniture itself costs something, putting it together costs something, because I'm sure they always come flat packed these days. And then putting it all in there also costs something. But if you move everything, you're doing the same thing anyways, plus you're rewiring.
Rewiring, yes.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, he does have a drop tile ceiling, so it's not the worst in his case. He's not having to actually bust open walls to do it, but it's not absolutely trivial to take down ceiling tiles and move all the wires around and all that kind of stuff. I mean, obviously this is a matter of personal preference. If I, you know what, it can be the type of thing where if I tell you, what I would do is probably try and have a larger stand and have everything at the front, because that's my personal preference. And if your immediate reaction to that is, then you know that you want to put a rack at the back of your room instead. And that's totally fine.
I've talked about this 1,000 times on this podcast, but there's some decisions that can be made by flipping a coin. And you flip that coin, and when you say, okay, heads, it stays at the front of the room, tails, I move everything. And you flip it, and you see what comes up. And if your immediate reaction is just like what Rob said, if it's, that's not what I wanted to see, then you know what your actual feeling is. Like sometimes you have to get out of your own head and just let your gut tell you what you want to do.
And we can back you on either of these, because it's not like one of these is clearly better than the other.
Better. Yeah. I mean, if it could save you from getting the active HDMI cable, that could save you some money right there.
That's true.
I mean, maybe that is. Maybe it has something to do with where you place your screen. I mean, are you have to buy like a stand for your center channel now? Maybe that's a cost you're not factoring in here. There's a couple other things to consider. So, sort of weigh it out. And if you can't, logic your way to it, then gut your way to it with a quarter.
Yeah, and I will just mention, if you do end up going with the rack solution and you want an actual full dedicated equipment rack, if that's what you're wanting to buy, Peerless, once again, is the brand I would point you to. B&H Photo, they sell Peerless's equipment racks, and they're like just slightly less than half the price of pretty much everybody else's racks, while still being really good quality. Yeah. So once again, Peerless comes up there.
There you go, Peerless. Nathan is trying to help a friend set up a theater in an L-shaped basement. It's a large space. Overall, the long section of the L is about 55 feet long. I feel like we answered this question, or we've dealt with this before, right?
No, not this particular one.
Maybe I'm thinking of something else.
Yeah.
This friend basically wants to put. Maybe I actually read his email. Possible. This friend basically wants to put the screen in the corner section of the L. So behind the couch would be the rest of the long part of the L.
Yeah. So
but the screen would be in the corner.
Well, like not in the corner, but
not straddling the corner, but
right.
in the okay. All right, and then to the left of that would be open to the short part of the L. In other words, there would only be a front wall and a right wall, and the back and left are wide open.
Yeah.
So Nathan is trying to figure out where the surround speakers would go. There's lots of room for screen and left, center, right speakers up front, and lots of space to put overhead speakers if they decide to. But his friend doesn't want any surround speakers on stands or towers. Surround speakers, having them mounted on a wall would be okay, or mounted in the ceiling. What do we suggest? Not the ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, particularly if you're going to do an Atmos setup. And again, with these really open rooms, I am less inclined to recommend actually doing Atmos. But if you don't have to put your surround speakers in the ceiling, I will always opt for not putting them in the ceiling wherever that is a possibility.
Right.
Now,
I'm put them on you obviously the right wall is there, so you put it there.
That's
right.
And
if you're because it's kind of hard. We don't have a picture.
We don't have a picture. We don't have dimensions, so we don't know exactly. But we do know it like stretches way back behind them. So let's please forget about the idea of surround back speakers. This is going to be a 5-point, however many subwoofers and maybe overhead speakers, but 5 floor level speakers is what we want.
So I mean, if you're close to that corner, of the L, if the back of the couch is close to that corner, or if there is a left wall for your behind your couch, then your surrounds go right there, and then you put the other one on the across from it, and Bob's your uncle.
Yeah.
Then I'd have no problems with you doing top fronts and top rears.
Yep.
In that case. But Rob's 100% correct. Surround backs.
Forget it. Yeah, I mean, even if this setup is such that. So you're coming up the long stretch of the L, and then you turn around the corner to the left. So in that corner section behind you to the left, even if that's a fair ways back, like, I'm okay with that. We're compromising a little bit here, but I'm okay with that because, again, we're sticking to 5, and when you're sticking to 5, your side surrounds should be a little ways behind you anyway. Dolby would recommend a 120 degrees from straight ahead center. So even if they're a ways behind you, or maybe the couch is far enough back that it's really close to where that wall turns into the left section of the L, but that is also fine. So I think you do have a left and right wall. That left wall might be some ways behind you, but that's where your wall-mounted side surround speaker goes, and that's it. That's what I would do.
And then you mirror it on the right side.
That's right.
On the other side, even though it's not, you're like, on the right side I can put it right where it's supposed to be. When I do that, because that's funny.
Symmetry still is preferable. Yeah.
Right. So Chris, back during episode 682. I don't even know what
we're on 88 now. 688.
All right, so 6 episodes ago, Chris asked for a second subwoofer recommendation. His room is 11 by 17 by 8, and he already owned the SVS PB12 NSD. Holy moly, that's a big one. That's all whopper. But he wanted the second sub to have a smaller footprint. The PC2000 Pro cylinder seemed like the obvious answer, but he didn't really think he wanted something that tall, so we said the SB2000 Pro would be fine. During the recent President Day sale, there was a slightly blemished SB2000 available at a great price, so he was about to buy that. But he wanted to double check, so he called SVS. They asked about the setup and plans, and they warned that it would be a huge mistake to pair his ported PB12 NSDs with this sealed SB2000. They suggested the sale price on the discounted PC2000, and Chris ended up following their advice. He's happy with it, and his wife actually thinks it looks pretty cool, and he can use it as a little stand next to his couch and Golden T arcade cabinet. So Golden T is a golf game.
That's right.
And
it does look cute there. It looks like it's ready to hold your drink.
That's right.
Shake it off, but hold it for a while.
Right. Hold it for a while. Be there for a bit. So all's well that ends well, but the obvious question, we said that the SB2000 Pro and PB12 NSD would be fine together in his room size, but SVS said it would be a huge mistake. He didn't get any sense that SVS was trying to needlessly upsell him. They seem genuine in there trying to get him the best results, so he trusts both of us and them, but we gave him opposite advice. Can we clarify? Yeah, they're wrong. But so what they did, and I've got absolutely no problems with this, because they're not doing what we're doing. Okay? They're not giving you advice based on actual need and actual performance and sometimes actual science. What they're looking at is I want to make sure that this customer gets everything he needs, plus things he may think he doesn't need, or it doesn't want, but actually wants. Plus, I don't want to have a return to deal with. So if you have a ported sub in your room, there is very little chance any manufacturer is going to say okay to a sealed right off the bat, because
it's not the de facto advice at all, for sure.
All you would have to do is go on AVS forum one time and say you had 2 subs and one of them was sealed and one was supported, and you would get deluged with comments from people who are saying you never should have paired these together. Those are this terrible match. You're ruining your sound, and one's flabby and one's tight, and what are you doing? It's not true. None of that is true, but many, 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 many people believe it.
Yes,
and so much so that I think that if the standing rule SVS is like, if they have sealed, sell them sealed. If they have ported, sell them ported. Sure. And I think that's a perfectly valid business reason to sell you what they sold you.
It is the safer that advice will apply to everyone with the likelihood of disappointment in the performance being exceedingly low. Yes. And you're the specialized case. Now, one thing that we still aren't 100% sure, neither of us was certain that the 11 by 17 by 8 is actually completely, truly enclosed. I'm pretty sure we mentioned in our original answer that that's true. If this is actually, that's the dimensions of this room, but it's actually permanently open to some other section, well, that changes the equation. And now we're going to want you to get the ported one, to match up with that. And maybe he gave that detail to SVS and we didn't have that. That could have easily changed the answer if that were the case. But if it is a enclosed 11 by 17 by 8, then we're going to say that even the SB2000 sealed box has enough output all on its own that it can play right down to 20 hertz in that small of a room if it's enclosed without any problem. Therefore, the ported one that you have has much more headroom down at 20 hertz. We are not going to dispute that one little bit. And if you were somehow blasting yourself to the point that you're actually using all of that headroom, then yes, only pairing it with another ported one will equal that in the second sub. But room size tells us, if it's enclosed, that you absolutely do not need that. You've got all this extra headroom. You don't actually need it. That's fine. You don't have to use headroom. So, I mean, yes, all's well that ends well. He ended up getting the footprint that he wanted. The looks ended up being a plus and not a minus, which is something we try to encourage people with the cylinder subs. But that's basically why the advice would be different. We were being very specific, and I think their advice is more general and would pertain to more people, and we would even agree with it if your room were more open. Right.
So what Rob said is correct, and we did make that caveat when we gave you advice. But I think that our listeners, anybody that would listen to this podcast for 2 hours more than once, or is smart enough, or at least educated enough to realize that the wives' tales out there about ported subs sounding one way and sealed subs sounding another are just hokum for the most part. There are design choices and there are design reasons why a sealed sub reacts or acts differently than a ported sub, but a sub that's playing flat to 20 hertz plays flat to 20 hertz.
Right.
It doesn't sound different to a different sub that has a different design that also plays flat to 20 hertz. They're both playing exactly the same sound.
Until you start to get to the limits of their output, and then you're limited to the weakest link in the chain at that point.
Yeah. So I trusted you enough that you would have gotten that sealed sub and said, I know it's not the same design, but that doesn't make a difference. Just like you could get a sub that has a carbon fiber woofer and a sub that has a paper cone woofer and not think that one sounds metallic and the other one sounds papery, whatever the heck that is. All right, let's go to the next question here. RD has a Denon X3400H that gives him Audyssey MultEQ XT32. Then his dual subwoofers also have their own DSP controls that offer fully variable phase, 3 bands of parametric EQ. I had to think about that for a second. And some filter options. And of course, there's the option to add even more controls via something like a miniDSP. How is he to know which controls he needs to use? Is Audyssey XT32 enough all on its own to the point that it would make adjusting the sub's built-in DSP controls redundant? Well, sir, this is just the question, really. There's, for most people, having parametric EQ, filters, even for the most part, a 0 to 180 phase knob or control on your subs is like having afterburners on your car. Sure, it sounds like a good idea, but you're never going to use it. And most people don't use it because they don't have the equipment to measure it. They don't have the expertise to use it correctly. And they don't have the time or the desire to put in to do all the things that you would have to do. Rob's little 12-step thing it's just dealing with the phase knob.
I would have you using that fully variable phase knob on one of your subwoofers, because that is something that you can't really manually do with Audyssey XT32 by itself. But that would be the only control other than the volume knobs on your subs to have them level matched before you begin. So the volume knob and the variable phase knob, I would have you using those on your dual subs. But then the rest, I would leave up to XT32. I wouldn't be messing about with anything else. I certainly wouldn't be adding a mini DSP in your case. To me, it's a bit of a work big to small type of approach, right?
Right.
Yeah, I'm like, I would have you follow my 12-step guide to setting up dual subwoofers. That'll have you using the volume knobs and the phase knob on one of your subs, volume knobs on both and phase knob on one of them, then running XT32. Now, if after that you were to measure and discover that there's something that XT32 isn't able to handle, well, now maybe a single band of parametric EQ on one or both of your subs might be able to fix that one very specific problem. It can happen, but I would, until I get to that point, I'm not thinking, I'm going to start somewhere outside of XT32. It's like, nope, I want them level matched. Then I want to get the phase knob adjusted so that I have as uniform response as I can get, and XT32 will take care of making that uniform response linear across all my seats very nicely, almost always.
But if you treat your room properly, meaning you put room treatments in your room and bass trapping as much as we recommend,
and position the two subs as close to optimally as possible, then
you use the volume knob is what you need to touch. Everything else is pointless at that point. And that's I know you're like, I got the sub, it's got all this stuff, and I've got $100. I can spend it on a mini DSP. I've already got amps or whatever. I could put it in there. And it's hard to hear, but you don't need any of that. But that's kind of the truth.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate subs that have that stuff built in, because not everybody has an AV receiver that has a good room equalization program built into it. Some people are connecting it to a stereo preamp, and they're definitely not going to have any of those controls. So I appreciate that. I love that there is something like a mini DSP once you start getting into 3 and 4 subwoofers, and maybe you want to start using the multi-sub optimization software. Well, now you're going to need some type of device like a mini DSP. So these things absolutely have their place, but if you're talking 2 subs and I've got MultEQ XT32, you work big to small, and you should need very little of it.
Yeah, those controls for the most part are for people who don't understand that filters and PEQs and stuff like that are parametric EQs that are built in the subs aren't a type of room treatment, and they actively eschew room correction. They actively eschew room correction and room treatments as being part of it. So they'll go in there and they'll have this terrible ringing from their sub, and they're like, so they figure out what frequency that is, and they cut it down with, and all of a sudden that's for them. That's for those people. That's what those controls are for. It's for those people. But you're not those people. You got all the good stuff. So you let the engineers program it, so you don't have to deal with any of that nonsense. Jay, we previously discussed Jay's dedicated theater build in his basement. We said to just wire his 2 pairs of side surround speakers in series, but he really wants to be able to switch between one pair or the other or both. We talked about this. This is the week that I think everybody's suggestion was, you're never going to use it. Stop it. So he's fine buying the monoprice speaker selector that we mentioned. He's also fine with the idea of 3 different Audyssey calibrations. So good on you, bud. Let us know how many times you use it. Put a little tick mark on the wall every time you use it. But the Marantz SR7010 that he already owns only stores 1 Audyssey calibration on its own, and it's old enough that it doesn't work with Audyssey Editor app. Is there a newer model that can store 3 different calibrations and switch between them, or could a newer model that works with the Audyssey Editor app allow him to easily switch? you can do it from your computer. Is that right? Is that how that works?
There is a save and load feature from your computer that you can do with the SR7010 because it does have a web interface. So you plug the IP address of the Marantz SR7010 into any web browser, and you can do controls there, and you can save and load configurations, but it's about a 5 to 10 minute process to unload and reload your new one. So not only are you making a switch on your speaker selector, but you're also going to spend somewhere in the range of 5 to 10 minutes on your computer to switch out your Audyssey calibration curve. So you can do that with your SR7010. That's just what you could do with what you have. If you were to upgrade to a newer Denon or Marantz model, all of them only store one Audyssey correction within themselves. That's all they can store at a time. There's no easy way to switch between multiple configurations, but the Audyssey Editor app does allow you to save and load, and it's a little bit quicker than the web interface used to be, although it's still a several minutes process. It's about 5 minutes at that point, so not tremendously different, but still doable and from your app instead of directly from a laptop. The only other option here would be to go to something a little bit different, like, well, I mean, there's the $4,000 monoprice HTP1 Pre-Pro, which gives you 6 Dirac slots, where you're going to set Dirac up using a laptop, but then it actually has 6 slots that you can switch between on the unit itself. So it's there, but it's $4,000, and it's only a Pre-Pro, so it means you'd have to have all external amplification for all your speakers. That's significantly increasing the price. So yeah, if you want free, but you have to spend some time, you can do it with what you have and a computer. You could do it with the app.
A tick mark on the wall every time. Don't forget. Tick mark. I want to see it. I want to see a picture of the tick marks.
Yeah, so like Yamaha,
Both
if you went over there, they store 2. Yamaha stores 2 in their flagships for the YPOW RSC with whatever else, the highest level with multi-point. That's the other thing that it's got. They store 2, but not 3, and you want 3. So yeah, gonna be a little bit tough. Save and load is probably the best. Spend the time.
So GA was initially planning to building an 8-inch tall seating riser for its back row, but then he came across some seating that offers back row models, which are just taller versions of the regular recliners. It seems like using those would be a lot easier. And if this is the man who's going to spend 5 minutes switching between Audyssey settings, but wants something easier than building a riser. Okay, I'm seeing some
contradictions
here. Yeah, I'm not sure that. So this is all meshing together perfectly. Seems like 2 different people are emailing us. So it seems like using this would be a lot easier, and if he sells his house, there won't be any complications to deal with as far as removing a big riser. But most of the back row models seem to be only 6 inches taller. Is that enough? Really don't seem to be many people who have bought these taller seats and offered reviews or opinions online. So is he missing something? Some reason to pass on buying these taller back row recliners? 6 inches is a normal step. That's what a normal step up at there. That's what 6 inches is. I mean, and you're talking 2 additional inches. You would think those 2 inches are going to make that big of a difference?
Well, it could be the difference between the part of somebody's head in front of you blocking a little bit of the screen versus not. It's about that. So this is actually a topic that we touched on with Alan in the HD Market interview.
Should have listened to the interview.
That's
what I'm hearing.
We talked about this a little bit. Now, Alan did actually mention that the HD Market seats, even though you won't see them listed online, if you call them, they can make these taller back row models in any of their HD design models. So it doesn't have to be specifically a seat manufacturer where they're already listed online. It's possible to get these custom made without the price being drastically more expensive. They just don't offer it directly at HD Market. But he was saying how one of the reasons he chose not to list them online is because he isn't a fan of them. And like, he deals with a lot of seats. He sells a lot of seats.
I just see a lot of people having to jump up onto these things and jump down off of them.
That was definitely part of it, is that it's not really comfortable to get in and out of. And he said the thing that everybody does that nobody considers is you get these ones that got the power reclining, right? And you get these taller seats. And he says so many people do not fully de-recline, right? The seat is still partially, the footrest is still a little bit up, or the seat is already a little bit back, and they kind of roll or rock their way out of the seat And it actually makes the whole thing kind of unstable and not entirely safer. He's like, this is a guy who deals with almost nothing but selling seats, and he's not a big fan of them. And I will defer to that kind of experience.
Sort of experience, yeah, no doubt, yeah.
Because you might be thinking, oh, who wouldn't press the button to de-recline and safely get out of their seat? Well, like a lot of people.
One of my children.
A lot.
All the time. My wife. My wife will be sitting, like, there's 2 power recliners and then one in the middle that's not a power recliner, right? So she'll sit on one of the power recliners. It'll be reclined back, and then I'll be sitting in the middle because that's where the best seat is. Mm-hmm. And she'll look at me. She goes, "Put your seat down so I can get out." And then I have to put the seat down and then scoot over so she can roll off the couch.
That's
not
right.
roll. I mean, that sounds terrible.
And Alan pointed out how it like what a lot of people do is the footrest is still up, so they scooch forward and sit on the footrest. And that's where they get up from. And it's not even so much that, oh, you're going to tip the seat over or something. It's that the footrest is not designed to handle your entire body weight. And now you end up ruining some of the mechanism of the recline. And now he's getting a service call saying, why did the footrest break? He's like, well, did you sit on the footrest?
My kids are constantly like, they put their knees where, and then their feet up where your head should be.
Right,
and their elbows on the footrest. And I'm like, sit on the chairs. Stop it. It's going to break them.
So I think he's got a point, Jay. I really do. I think that's very likely a lot of it. And hey, maybe you use the bed, the box spring.
Box spring. There you go. Knock it out. So just an update. We told them not to buy the Golden Ear reference towers that were a demo pair being offered by his local dealer, first at 12.8%, which is super random, and then later at 30% off. He already owned Golden Ear Triton 2 Plus towers, so we just said the upgrade didn't make any sense for his room size, and the discount wasn't big enough anyway, so blah. And he, of course, ignored us. Which is fine. I mean, it is fine. Sometimes people ask us questions because, and I swear, there are so many people who ask us questions, and the answer is, you've already done it, so why are you asking us? Because,
But you know what, again, we are helping. If we give advice and your reaction to it is, I really don't want to do that, we've still helped.
Yeah.
Because if you were having trouble deciding and our statement made you go, no, I'm going to do the opposite, I say we still helped.
So he bought the reference towers anyway, but we did give him enough information and confidence to haggle further and get a better price. So he says, thanks so much for that. If you didn't get 50%, then I didn't.
We did say 50%. That was our...
You specifically said 50%, and I was like, that seems fine, but you could probably go a little lower than that. These are demo pairs. Jason. Anyway, so honestly, dude, I forgot your name already. What is it? Jay. So congratulations on your speaker purchase. I'm sure you're happy with them, and that's great. And sometimes we just want the top of the line no matter what.
He did already own the reference center, so now he has the matching reference towers, and I'm sure it works swimmingly.
It's great. Jason and his wife just had a house built. The plans include a bonus room that will become a dedicated home theater, but since they just moved in, the only TV in the house at the moment is their 65-inch Samsung The Frame mounted above their fireplace, because of course it is. In the wide-open living room, it's a 2-story space that is open at the back to the kitchen and the rest of the house, so a bajillion
it's all the cubic feet.
It's all the cubic feet. It looks nice above his little TV there. It's kind of blue, but that's not the fault of the TV, but it looks nice up there. It's like the perfect size. Yeah, it's very nice. So, I love your kitchen too. It's too white for me, but I do like your big old
lots of hard flat surfaces, super tall in here, going up to the second story in this living room, and then open to the kitchen at the back, and so all the things.
So Samsung's The Frame TV was chosen because it has its art mode, which makes it look like a normal piece of art workman's in standby, and since they will have a dedicated theater, there's no plan or desire at all for this setup to be a great sounding surround sound system, but the TV speakers alone sound truly terrible, and they've both agreed something better is needed. During the construction, speaker wire was run from the lower left cabinet beside the fireplace to the bookcases on either side. He's temporarily placed some old, small Klipsch satellite speakers just to show where the speakers would go, but they aren't hooked up to anything. Are these two separate? These are two separate photos.
Those are two separate photos. Those are on either side of the fireplace. And if we go back up to the fireplace photo, you can barely see the little speakers. If you look at where the candles are, and then over to the left and over to the right from where the candles are on the fireplace mantle, they're the little teeny black boxes, one sitting next to the little white basket on one side and one sitting next to the candle.
I literally cannot see them, but
they're very small speakers.
That they are there.
They are there, yeah.
There's also a pair of in-ceiling speakers that were installed in the kitchen for whole house audio. The speaker wire for those is also run to that same lower left cabinet. And Jason would like to be able to play whatever is on in the living room TV through those kitchen speakers. So what receiver will let him hook up both pairs of speakers while fitting nicely into that lower left cabinet? And what bookshelf speakers will at least sound tolerable, hopefully even good, all on their own in this huge open space? So any receiver, because basically you can wire these the same way we talk about wiring surrounds. You can wire them in series. If it's always going to be on, you could do that.
Yeah.
But
you could also just do a zone 2.
You can do a zone 2, yeah. Or you could do like the ones that have A/B selector switches and turn both of them on, which is basically the same thing too.
Yeah.
But zone 2 would work as well.
Yeah.
With just about any receiver built in the last 10 years.
Pretty close, yeah. Well, I mean, if it's a strictly 5.1, then it probably won't have a zone 2. But almost the most entry-level 7.1 AV receiver will probably have a zone 2 available to it these days, where all they do is repurpose the surround back binding posts to be zone 2. Now, you're only talking about driving 2-channel stereo for your front left right, so there's no problem also connecting zone 2 to your kitchen speakers. All the wires are running to that lower left cabinet anyway, so should be no problem there. Now, he said he wanted something like compact. I don't know how much space, what the shelving spacing is like inside of those cabinet doors, so I'm like, I'll play it safe and say a Marantz Slimline, because that is, if that doesn't fit, nothing will, as far as a regular AV receiver
will, yeah, for sure.
Now, again, as I just mentioned, you're going to want one of the 7.1 models, not 5.1 models. So over at Accessories for Less, they have the NR1609. That's, I think that came out at the tail end of 2018. But you know what? The features are still totally fine and still passes through Dolby Vision and HDR10 and all the HDR formats and 4K and everything. So no worries there. $400 is the going price for the NR1609 from Marantz, the Slimline. Now, that isn't the beefiest amplification built into those slim lines. I want you to get some pretty efficient speakers in here. Klipsch would be a totally great choice in here.
Right. I agree.
It absolutely would. Now, something a little bit larger than these teeny tiny little satellites, which he himself said is just so you have an idea of where the speakers are going. But yeah, if you went Klipsch, I've got less than zero problem with that. I think it's a good choice. But HSU is also an alternative, where if the price or just the looks or whatever work a little bit better, HSU's horn-loaded HP1, or you might even go for the HC1, the larger one that is marketed as a center, but can totally be used vertically if you want to, and just do that.
There's enough room in there for this, but maybe...
Well, it could go horizontally, honestly.
Yeah, and honestly, dude, so many times I've seen people get weirded out by their speakers being in a not lined up with their center of their TV or to the side of their TV. It literally does not matter.
Yeah,
you could put them in any of those shelves and it would be fine. I would put them on the same shelf, side by
left and right,
left, right. But I would not care if they were on top of if they were below the top of the cabinets, basically.
Just on top of the lower cabinets, because when you're sitting down, that's gonna be about ear height with a normal size.
And your brain
speaker
will put everything up into that TV anyway,
you
don't have to worry about it. Yeah, I would not go crazy worrying about this. I would put them where they fit, not put them where it seems like they should be.
Sure.
In this case.
I think that Marantz Slimline plus some Klipsch or HSU speakers are going to serve you well here.
I think so too. You could spend a little time looking around at other horn-loaded options or other high-efficiency speakers that are out there. You could search Accessories for Less as well and just see what they've got. I know they're always got KEF and stuff, and KEF isn't as efficient, but they are pretty directional and would be a nice looking usually option depending on which ones you go for. So there's stuff out there. Patrick, we mentioned it on the podcast some time ago, but what microphones do we use to record the podcast? Crap.
I'll mention mine while you look at yours. I have an Audio Technica AT2005 USB. Now, even though, as the name implies, it does have a USB output, it also has an XLR output, which I do actually use the XLR output on mine. I plug that into an ART USB dual pre, which is a little USB microphone preamplifier. I do that because that lets me mix in my own headphone sound and everything like that to it, which actually I could kind of do through the microphone because it has its own headphone output too, but whatever. I've got the setup. I've got Audio Technica AT2005 USB is my microphone.
Yeah, mine's the AT2020. It's a XLR only, and it goes into a. Let me go look.
Audio Technica as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
PreSonus Audio Box 44 VSL, and that was provided by a listener. I had that before. I had something else, and it broke, and then they sent this to me. PreSonus Audio something. Do I gotta look it up again?
That's okay. I'll listen to it later.
Audio Box 44 VSL.
44 DSL?
VSL.
VSL.
Victor.
There you go. Gotcha.
So, and then I have stands and other things, but yeah, it's just whatever. That's what it is.
Yep.
And that plugs USB into my computer, and it's got that one has phantom power. This mic requires phantom power. Basically Audio Technica. I hear a lot of people because I'm a member of a number of Facebook groups. Somehow, I don't know how I get on these groups, but one of them is like a podcasters group, which does almost nothing but market to each other about their podcasts. I'm like, this is just stupid. None of us are listening to each other's podcasts. We all know this. So why are you people trying to get people to listen to your podcast here? It's just dumb. Occasionally somebody will ask a question. I see other microphones that are being hyped, Blue Yeti or whatever it is.
Yes,
is
of course.
One that goes around. But the Audio Technica, for me, for the money, as long as you get the right one that you're for your setup, I would. When I bought this was almost a dozen years ago now. There wasn't a USB version of this microphone, which is basically kind of similar. Not yours is a
we can just mention. Yeah, mine is a dynamic cardioid microphone. If you're not looking at the video, it's the exact style that somebody would be holding on stage. A singer would hold on stage. It's that exact type of microphone. Whereas Tom's is a compressor. Condenser, yeah. Condenser microphone.
Right. I was right.
You are right. I said the wrong word. Condenser microphone, which means your room needs to be quieter because it's going to pick up noises from farther away more easily all around. It's not exactly omnidirectional, but it's less directional than mine. Mine is highly directional. I need to speak right down the barrel of my microphone.
Right. So that's there's and then I've got like a shock mount on mine as well because I was constantly hitting it and it was getting ridiculous. So the shock mount makes all the difference. So that basically the microphone itself is supported by a bunch of basically rubber bands. Yeah. And so if I put my hand on my stand, the stand will move, but the microphone, it doesn't shake the
it's a shock absorber.
Yeah. So that's about the only things really that are doing. Yeah. I've got okay. There you go. Manuel. Anyways, whoever you are. Manuel has decided to put together his own DIY speakers designed by D+S Tech Labs. But time and price mean he'll be doing a little at a time. He decided to start with the Center, the least important speaker in the entire setup as far as I'm concerned.
That's actually what he's asking about, so we're going to dig right into that,
Fort Lauderdale, Florida is where these guys for large audio. Is this the setup he's doing?
No, not the exact one. I just linked to their projects for DIY speakers. So it's kind of like a kit, I think, that you're purchasing from them, and you're doing the assembly, possibly building the whole cabinet. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so he owns a pair of Klipsch towers and Klipsch Center at the moment. He plans to sell the Klipsch Center eventually to partially fund his new D+S Tech Center speaker build. While that is underway, would we recommend just running a Phantom Center, or do we think it would be better to pick up some $100 Center speaker just for the time? No.
Oh, absolutely. This is such an easy answer. Run the Phantom Center. That is totally all you need to do.
I wouldn't even build the Center first. I would sell your Center, run the Phantom Center, add more money until you can buy the left and rights, and then
build those first, and continue to run a Phantom Center, and then build the surrounds, and then build the Center last. That would probably be our plan of attack.
This is setups? No, these are
I didn't really look through much of the D+ Tech Labs design.
Products. So there it is. Products. There's a speaker, and then there's a bunch of different ones, and then a bunch of different ones.
I don't have images to show people. So, folks, if you want to look it up, we'll have a link to D+ Tech Labs and their projects.
If you want to see a bunch of CAD created images of speakers that aren't real, then you can go to their website and check it out. I would so I said I would not do the Center. I would do something else. I am now going to revise my thing and say, go ahead and do the Center and see if it sounds like garbage before you invest in anything else, because I'm seeing some real
multi-tweeter designs and stuff like that. Things I normally wouldn't be a fan of in terms of design. So if you're building one speaker and you get to test it out, we're okay with that as being your test.
If you're doing the Master Series, which is the MTM design, you're probably safe, but all the rest of it looks suspect.
He definitely mentioned he's going to have one with dual vertically stacked tweeters at the least.
I would find someone in your area. They've got to have a forum, right? Or something on AVS, a subreddit or something where people actually have built these things and you can go listen to them, because I would not invest in this until I listen to it.
I say Godspeed to you.
Yeah, let us know how it works out. It's probably the best thing in the world, I guess. Whatever. Zeke has a Denon X3400H. On an occasion, he wants to adjust just the subwoofer or the center speaker trim level, but he finds it annoying to have to do all the button presses to dig into the manual speaker settings and then listen to the pink noise just to temporarily boost the center a few dB or lower the subwoofer output just for a little while. Is there an easier way to do this? Does he need a Harmony remote to make it happen? 3400.
3400H. So I looked specifically at its manual.
Do they have the base thing? They added that a couple of years ago, I feel like, where you can
the
boost
low
bass.
frequency containment.
Well, that would turn the bass off. Is that what he wants to do? Is that what he says lower the output for just a little while. So if they have LFC, then that essentially does that, but it doesn't just lower it by a couple of dB.
It rolls it off. Rolls it down. No, there's a thing to do exactly what he's talking about. It's not the easiest thing to find in the manual because it doesn't exist in the manual under the settings listing, which you would think, isn't this a setting? No, this is part of the playback part of the section of the manual under the convenience functions. That's where you would find this described. This is the option button on your remote. If you press option on your Denon remote, you'll get a few things, one of which is called channel level adjust. And that's where right on screen you can go through and change all of the channels actually a little bit. Now, what that's doing is it is not overriding what is in your actual speaker settings. Whether that's what Audyssey set or whether you manually set all your speaker trim levels, those remain static. But by pressing the option button and going to the channel level adjust, it remembers input by input what you've done, and then there is a reset option right there to put it back to where your actual speaker settings are. So it's somewhat temporary. It's not like automatically temporary. It won't revert on its own. But it's temporary in the sense that you are not altering your entire speaker settings, the actual trim levels. This is where you can alter it input by input and just boost up your center a little bit or just lower your subwoofer a little bit. You don't need a Harmony remote to do this. You could use a Harmony to do this. You could program a whole sequence on your Harmony to do all of this with one button press if you wanted to, but it isn't necessary. It's the option button on your remote. You look nonplussed.
I'm looking at this D+S Tech Labs website. It looks like a MySpace page, and it is driving me crazy that it's like the most non-intuitive. Like, you get to a web page, and then the menu changes to be that whatever that sub.
I mean, I'm not going to try and talk Manuel out of this at this point, because if he's somehow gone into this journey and decided to do this, I'm like, well, that didn't happen by sheer accident.
I would hope not.
It would take effort to get there. So, he's building the one speaker, but yeah, to try it out.
Yeah. I don't think I would sell that Klipsch, dude. I think I would keep it. Ken got his Marantz Slimline receiver and monoprice HT35 5.1 speaker package for his computer setup. The monoprice subwoofer does not have a dedicated LFE input, and there's no dedicated LFE switch or LFE setting on the crossover knob. So should he just turn the crossover knob up as high as it'll go, which is 150 in this case, he's assuming the Marantz will take care of all of the bass management and crossovers. Correct? Everything you said is absolutely right.
That is spot on. That is exactly what you do. But this is a good reminder. This comes up from time to time. Not everybody is buying an SVS subwoofer that has an input that's labeled LFE. Not everybody is buying one of the subs that we recommend. Some of them have strange settings on that.
We haven't had to say this in a long time, but you're absolutely right. We should remind ourselves that
it never hurts.
Subs don't die.
Yeah. In case people are wondering, like, what? So it's got this crossover knob on the back of the sub. You're going to turn that all the way clockwise as far as it will go. Some of them, when you do that, it'll now say, LFE on the back of the thing. But in this case, it just goes up to 150 hertz. Why are we saying to do that? Well, we are applying a filter inside of the AV receiver. It's going to begin filtering just slightly above 80 hertz if you're using a normal crossover frequency, or since these are small satellite speakers, maybe it's going to be 100 or 110 or 120 or something like that. But the AV receiver is applying that crossover. Now, if the crossover built into the subwoofer were also set at some lower frequency level, well, it's going to begin applying a filter down at that frequency. It's going to be cascading into each other. So we want to make sure that it is not touching the frequency, where we want it to the subwoofer to touch those frequencies as little as possible and have the filtering being applied by the AV receiver.
The subwoofer crossover to do that. You don't want that to touch it. You have the subwoofer to play out everything that the receiver sends it without the subwoofer saying, "Oh yeah, I don't need to play that."
That's right.
So that's basically what we're doing.
Yeah, it is on the built into the subwoofer. It is a low pass filter. And the way to remember what does a low-pass filter do versus a high-pass filter, insert the word can. If you say low can pass filter, okay, so now it's saying everything below 150 hertz passes through, and I only start to filter off above 150. The AV receiver is doing the same thing, but it's beginning at 80 or 100 or 110 or 120. So the subwoofer isn't going to start filtering anything off until up at 150. So it's not affecting everything below that, and the AV receiver is starting below that. So that's what we want.
Jeremy from France. Bonjour, Jeremy. I've been practicing my French with my foreign exchange student, and she says I am terrible. So, comment allez-vous? First up, Jerry wanted to say that he's been listening to AVRant for a few years now. When he first started listening, he had no plans to upgrade his Pioneer Kuro and his Sony home theater, and he struggled to understand many of our answers. And if he's being honest, he struggled to understand some of the questions, too. Okay, me too. It's not a language barrier thing here, Jeremy. Sometimes the questions I'm like, wait, now say it again in English, Rob. But he kept listening, and he started reading and researching more on his own, and now he really feels like his own plans have become very clear, and he greatly enjoys hearing what other people are doing in their theaters. So he wants to say thank you for all of that. You are welcome, sir.
That's awesome.
This is how people catch the upgrade bug, but,
He certainly did.
You're like, I'm perfectly happy with everything I have. Let me hear about everybody else's problems so I can laugh at them. Ooh. I wish I had the 2 subwoofer problem. In this open room, this is the open room with plans for in-wall speakers that were done by Klipsch Design Service. I don't know what that is, but I'm so sure.
Well, it's because we're revisiting this. Jeremy has written in before. And don't worry about these plans that show an in-wall subwoofer. We already talked through all of that. So these were the original Klipsch Design things that were sent to him. Yeah.
So Jeremy is planning on the wall-mounted 77-inch OLED, but the spot where the TV will go is right where the wall transitions from brick to drywall, and it's not perfectly flush transition. And Jeremy says he doesn't want the TV mounted on the drywall portion, only on the brick portion. So is there a TV wall mount that can move the TV laterally a bit? Absolutely.
Yes.
There's a whole bunch of them.
Yep. You're going to want one that's, they label them as a full motion TV wall mount, which, as the name describes, you can move them not always up down, sometimes up down a little bit, but definitely side to side, definitely like swiveling it left to right, angling it, tilting it up down, that type of thing. But main thing is that it's on either 1 or 2 articulated arms that do allow you to move the entire thing left to right. Should warn you that when you do that, though, it usually has to protrude from the wall somewhat. Like, it's not going to be perfectly flushed back against the wall, but that's kind of what you have to do.
Yeah. I think that basically in this case you could, I mean, I understand what you're saying. It's not perfectly flush and you don't want to do anything, but I don't think it should be much of an issue if you're not installing this yourself. If you're having somebody install it, they could just put some furring strips or some sort of shims to even this thing out so that you can mount it exactly where you want to mount it and have it on both. I don't think that should be an issue. If you're really dead set on this, it's fine. It's just by moving it to the left or the right or whatever direction it is, it's just going to limit. You got to make sure that it's got enough of that movement that you're not showing. And like Rob said, I would have gotten a fully articulated mount anyways, because invariably you want to stand just a little bit off to the side when you're in a
Right.
situation like this. So he's pretty much decided to go with the Klipsch Pro Reference Premier in-wall speakers, but on their own, they're open on the back. What should he have installed for sound isolation?
Mm-hmm.
Earplugs.
Well,
Those will work.
For everybody else, not you.
For everybody else. Yeah, so backup boxes, some sort of, I mean, because these are in walls, right?
These are in walls. And to be fair to him, even if he was reading through the full installation manual, in this case, Klipsch, puts in their installation manual, like, these speakers were designed to work within a normal 16-inch on-center bay, so they don't have their own dedicated backer boxes that they sell for these specific speakers. Right. They say flat out, like, these were designed to work in a normal 16-inch on-center bay, which, gives you that full size. So I am still perfectly okay with making your own backer boxes for these, or having your installer make backer boxes for them. Almost any in-wall speaker, including these, as long as you have 1 cubic foot of interior space. Now, keeping in mind that the wall is only 3.5 inches deep, that means a pretty tall box. Yeah. If you're getting one, but if you have 1 cubic foot of air, and I mean, it doesn't have to be pretty, it's inside your wall, you're talking some OSB or some plywood, you're just making that interior box, put insulation inside of that backer box that's constructed, and fill all the seams with acoustic caulk so that no air can leak out of it. That's really all that needs to be done. Doesn't have to be expensive at all. And when you're opening up the wall to put these in, you put in these backer boxes.
So he doesn't think it's likely because of the cost, but he hasn't completely ruled out the in-wall Klipsch THX Ultra speakers. They're already sealed, so would he hear a big improvement, or should he just stick with the Pro Reference Premier models? I don't know the difference between these two, but my gut feeling is usually the THX models, the reason why you get the certification behind them, it is not worthless, but what it mostly does is make sure that your speakers are going to cross over into a subwoofer properly,
right,
at 80 hertz, like guaranteed. And they're relatively flat, which is kind of what you're going for anyway. So I'm guessing the differences would be negligible.
I mean, those Klipsch THX Ultra speakers, they've been around for a while. They are a significantly older speaker at this point. I mean, they kept them in the lineup because places still, I mean, there are mastering studios that still use those speakers. So fair enough. But this isn't what I would do. I like, just flat out for your installation, it's not what I would do. I would save the money. I would go with the Pro Reference Premier. I think they're the right choice for you, and you don't need to spend more on the THXs. I know they exist, and you're like, oh, they're higher up in the lineup and they cost more, but I don't think they're the right choice.
There you go. Infinite Gary. Infinite Gary says, can we suggest a scene in a movie where there is a very clear vertical sound movement, like sound that clearly travels from the floor to the ceiling or vice versa, not just individual sounds that are obviously high and low in position, but one continuous sound that clearly moves vertically? Gary can't recall ever hearing such a sound and would like to compare such a sound in Atmos versus regular 5.1. Well, I guess I don't know, but there's lots of stuff that goes overhead and then to the front of the theater, overhead to the back of the theater. That would count, would it not? I feel like that counts as long as, like. So I
think he's thinking of like a literal object that's just like on the floor and moves straight up, and that. So it's not
I'm sure
quite
there's
that.
a demo disc that does that, but you
would
have to find
not off the top of my head. Okay, so I'm not certain of this at all. I vaguely recall some Pixar movie that I swear had this type of... It was either one of the Toy Stories or one of the Incredibles, where I'm like, I swear I noticed a sound that basically just like shot straight up vertically. And I'm quite certain it was a Pixar movie, but I can't remember if it was one of the Toy Stories or one of the Incredibles. I think it was Incredibles 2.
Well, I kind of feel like that beginning of Clone Wars, where the ship flies
that
in
comes
over the top of you,
down.
and then comes down.
Yeah,
I feel like that would qualify if you could find an Atmos, And even if you
there
the
will
Atmos
be.
up mix,
We're going to have the Ultra HD Blu-rays of all the Star Wars movies coming out this year, and if you have Disney Plus, you can already listen to the Atmos mix. If you have an Apple TV 4K, since that's still the only device that outputs Atmos from Disney Plus. So those, if anybody else listening has a suggestion, because we're drawing a little bit of a blank, and I can't tell you exactly which Pixar, or even if it really was, it just vaguely rang a bell for me. I'm like, I swear I heard that type of thing in one of the Pixar movies.
I have not. I don't think I've seen the most recent Toy Story movie, and I don't think I've seen either of the Incredible movies since I got overhead speakers. So, no. I don't know. Well, let us know if you figure something out, Gary.
That's right.
He asked, what are our thoughts on the new HD vinyl production method being proposed by a Rebeat Innovation in Austria? I think you could put HD in front of anything and sell it to people. Rather than a chemical process to produce the stamper, HD vinyl production would use a laser cut. Ooh, lasers are expensive. Ceramic stamper. Wait a second, still a stamper. That lasts 10 times as long and would allow for a longer playing time and or a larger dynamic range and better signal-to-noise ratio on vinyl records that would still play on any existing turntable and still sound significantly worse than any CD you could buy. I think I'm going to stick with my CDs, buddy. I'm going to stick with that. Sorry.
I got to say that anything that increases the price, I don't see winning. Yeah. I even if it's outright better, I don't see it winning. Also, their website is all speculative. They're like, we expect to be able to start doing this in 2020. I'm like, well, I'll see it in 2025 because small companies that do something new like this, it's like Kickstarter, man. They never come out on time. Never, ever, ever. So I'm not super bullish on this, Gary.
Just look at this, man. Okay, so it's a laser cut ceramic stamper. How is the stamper going to make it last 10 times as long?
No, the stamper itself will last 10 times as long as the current stampers that are used.
Well, who cares about that? That doesn't help me.
That's what I mean. I'm like if it ups the price, and it will.
Garbo, so whatever.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, all you vinyl lovers out there. Oh my God, so he said it was Garbo. Unsubscribe, Tom.
Yep. Thumbs down. Gotta get more than one per video.
Come on.
We can only count on one.
Oh man, I need more thumbs down. Carlos, some speakers come with optional support plugs, and the instructions typically say use them if the speaker is going to be positioned close to a wall or within a cabinet. But what about ported speakers that do not come with optional port plugs? If you're going to put them close to a wall or a wall boundary, could you or should you plug the ports? Will doing so damage the speakers? What will happen to the frequency response? And what are the pluses and minuses? If that speaker designer did not design their speaker with port plugs in mind, you are risking damaging those speakers. Now, will you guarantee to damage those speakers? No.
In fact, I would say it's a little bit unlikely that you will, but it's possible.
I remember having this conversation with Shane Rich over at RBH, and I asked about this exact thing, I think in an interview for this podcast many, many moons ago. And he said, yeah, don't do that.
Typically what you're risking there is building up excess heat in the voice coil. One, because you don't have air moving in and out as the speaker was designed to, but also because you're asking the driver to work harder to play frequencies where normally the port would be contributing. So overall, you're asking the speaker to work harder without air movement that it was designed to have, which can lead to overheating of the voice coil. Now, if volume levels are kept low, the wattage input is low, then the likelihood of actually damaging the speaker is also low. But if it wasn't designed that way, I mean, a lot of speakers where they have the option to seal them with a port plug, they'll also have some kind of switch where the crossover is now changed to make sure that the lower frequencies are filtered out so that the driver doesn't work itself too hard and the voice coil doesn't heat up. What does it do to the frequency response? It changes it from the port contributing, which usually means that it plays lower. So it stays linear down to a lower frequency, but then rolls off steeply. That's a ported speaker design. Whereas a sealed one will start to roll off higher, but at a shallower slope. That's usually what's going on there. But the crossover has to be designed for that as well, which is why typically they have a switch. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend doing this. I mean, there are some speakers where it's an option that you can add on, but the option is still there. Clearly, the speaker designer thought about it ahead of time and said, if you want to do that, we can sell you the port plugs. That's okay. Totally fine with that if this is the situation, but if not, it's not something we would recommend.
Manuel, Is this a different?
Different Manuel.
Uh-huh. All right. Well, previously wrote us when he was asking what he should replace first when his Onkyo receiver's HDMI board died for the 4th time, and one of his 2 AV123 MFW15 subwoofers also died. He's going to replace both the subwoofers eventually, but he is taking our advice and getting a new receiver first. He was using a Velodyne SMS1 to equalize and adjust his dual subs. If he gets a new receiver with Audyssey MultEQ XT32, will he still need the SMS1? If he's able to sell the SMS1, those funds will allow him to get a new receiver that much sooner. I would totally sell that thing.
Yep.
Yeah, in a heartbeat.
Yeah, the SMS1 was Audyssey.
It is when it came out, it blew everybody's mind, including mine. I had not only the SMS1, but I had SMS1 with like the 4 microphone like add-on thing, so I could do all 4 seats at the same time, and I did everything wrong because no one knew how to do it right back then. We were pointing the microphones forward. I had one in the middle of each seat. The microphone was basically sitting back on the headrest because no one knew.
Yep.
We did not know how to do this properly, and the instructions weren't any help because they didn't really know how to do it properly. They had an idea, they knew how to make the technology, but we still didn't quite understand how the room and what was going on was affecting everything. So I love that thing. I thought it was great. So what it did is it set a test tone to your receiver, and the receiver would play the test tone through your speakers, all of your speakers, I think. I don't remember exactly how it worked. And then there were microphones. It would show you a live graph, a live readout of what it was. And then you could change the parametric EQ and then watch it change that line. Woo, over and over again, right? And you could see it change. Now, there was all kind of problems with it, like the smoothing was like 1/3 octave or something like that. So, you really weren't seeing actually what was going on. You were seeing like an average of what was going on, and so it was really hard to kind of dial it in. And it couldn't do the bass at all. So there was problems with it. But at the time it came out, it was the bomb. Everyone wanted it. It was the hot ticket at CDI. That's all we talked about. So I love it. Sell it right now. Sell it while somebody will still buy it. Sell it.
Yep. You will be okay without it.
Yeah. Juls H from the UK. Juls. I like that. I want to be named Jules. It's a neat spelling too.
It's like Jules Verne.
Is that how Jules Verne spelled his name?
I'm pretty sure.
I thought there was an E in there someplace.
I don't know. It's not like we have some way of looking that up. It doesn't exist. Nobody knows.
If only we had like handheld supercomputers that were connected to some sort of network that had access to all the information man has ever had. Someone should
what an idea.
That.
They should.
Oh my God!
We could be
money.
We could be billionaires, Tom.
Hey,
we should do that.
Let's patent that tomorrow before
That's
someone
right.
steals it from us.
I just looked it up. Jules had an E.
I thought so.
Jules Verne, that is.
Anyway, this Jules does not. Jules
right.
without an E. See, we thought he could be related to the Verne guy, but now he's just like Jules, not Verne, which is not as much fun. Without an E. Jules says his theater installation is finally finished. Yay! It wasn't as easy or quick as he had envisioned. It never is. But he bought all of his gear from Richer Sounds in the UK, and they really looked after him, so he's happy with the experience. So if you're in the UK and you know where Richer Sounds is, check them out. He went with the Onkyo TXRZ740 receiver specifically because he wanted to integrate his system with the Google Home ecosystem, and his Onkyo's receivers have Chromecast built in. However, the first unit he got could not be found on his network as a Google Cast device, so he contacted Richard Sounds, and they replaced it right away. The replacement unit was detected right away, but then it turns out that none of the BBC radio channels work, and Jules listens to a lot of BBC radio.
Yeah.
He is regretting the Onkyo purchase, but he doesn't know what else to consider. We always seem to recommend Denon X, and they do mention they can work with an external Google Assistant device for voice control. But the whole idea is to not have to keep switching to a separate app to control the AV receiver. And without Chromecast built in, it seems like the whole setup would be more complicated. So works with the Google Assistant mean that he can pull any app on his phone and easily cast it to a Denon receiver, or would more apps be a complication, or would
more apps and
complications be involved? Any alternatives that might work for him?
So first part with the works with Google Assistant, no, it doesn't suddenly turn it into a Chromecast built in.
Right.
The way Denon describes it is they actually say start whatever it is that you're doing, either with your remote or with the HEOS app. So if you're streaming a source, you would do it with the HEOS app. Then the Google Assistant can allow you to do things like play and pause and change the volume via your voice. But that's really all it is. It is absolutely not Chromecast in any way, shape, or form. If you were to get an external Chromecast device and plug it into your Denon, then still you're having to turn on the Denon and go to that input via remote or via the Denon control app, and then you could Chromecast to a separate Chromecast dongle. So you're right that it's adding complicated. Like what he wants to be able to do is not only just pull up whatever service he wants on his phone and cast that to his AV receiver, but he wants the AV receiver to, automatically power up and go to that correct input, and so that it's like one button press on his handheld device and it all fires up.
Can he marry this with a Harmony remote to make all this happen, like a hub system? Because I know my parents can do that with She Who Shall Not Be Named.
Right.
And they don't have to say. They used to have to say, what's her name? Mm-hmm. Tell the Harmony remote, turn on the TV.
Yeah.
But now they don't have to do that anymore.
The skill's built in.
It's built in. You could just say, turn on. Hey, who? Turn on the TV.
Yeah.
And it will. So can we not do this with a Harmony remote and one of our other things?
Well, I mean, there again, it is still a more complicated setup, although not more complicated to use. But it means if he's already in the Google ecosystem, he's not going to want to switch to the Amazon ecosystem.
No, I'm asking if the Google ecosystem also
can control Harmony.
Harmony, yes.
But you're still asking it to first turn on, go to the input, and then you're having to separately cast. It's not like the one button press easy, it just goes. I mean, the Onkyo that's what's nice about having Chromecast built right in, is just that one of the primary services that he wants isn't supported.
Right. That's unfortunate.
It is, and I don't have a way better solution for you, because as far as Chromecast built in, so Pioneer and Onkyo are exactly the same. I mean, if something doesn't work on the Onkyo, it's not going to magically work on Pioneer. They're actually the same company at this point. Right. And the other one is NAD, but they only have it on one of their stereo integrated amps. They don't have it on any of their AV receivers Chromecast built in right now. Right. So neither of those is really a solution. I mean, I don't have a great solution for this. I mean, other than hoping that somehow the BBC radio service starts working with Chromecast, because that's kind of what you need. It's either that or you have to switch to a different voice assistant. I mean, even like you say, setting it up with a Harmony, it's still at least a 2-step process.
Right.
Ugh.
I'm sorry, dude.
I know, because I mean, like Denon and AVRant basically.
Probably the solution probably really is stick with the Onkyo and just wait for them to work it out, which they probably will eventually.
I guess. Ugh.
I hate to say that, but that's
you could
probably the solution.
You could, of course, always Bluetooth from your phone into the Onkyo. That'll definitely work. God, what else?
You got Bluetooth. You could Bluetooth it into one of those other receivers too, though. You don't need an Onkyo for that.
Well, sure. I guess he probably has an Android phone, not an iPhone, so doing AirPlay 2 isn't going to help you there. What else? I mean, Denon and AVRant, they basically want you to use HEOS. Yamaha definitely wants you to use MusicCast. Right. So all of them are requiring you to switch which, online app thing is doing your music streaming rather than it all being Google-based. So it's either you're going to have to switch what ecosystem you're in or... God, I wish there were a better solution, but I don't have one.
I feel like somebody's going to tell us.
That'd be nice.
I feel like there is a solution out there, and that somebody's tell us. I feel like if you get like one of those weird little hockey pucks that the Google sells,
well, that's just it. I wonder
that
if
into the receiver and then as a source.
Yeah, because I wonder if this is a matter of Chromecast built in on the Onkyo doesn't support BBC Radio, but a regular Chromecast does. I don't know if that would be the case. I don't know if it's just that BBC Radio doesn't support Chromecasting. Because like with Chromecasting, right, you start it on your smartphone or your tablet, and when you cast it to the other device, you don't actually need your smartphone or tablet active anymore. The other device takes over and streams it down from the internet directly. So it could just be that the Onkyo doesn't support BBC Radio via Chromecast, but an actual Chromecast device does. It's not you could look at that, because that's at least a little bit less. You're not leaving the ecosystem entirely to do it that way.
Right.
That's the best we got. Sorry.
All right. So he hasn't installed his 4 in-ceiling Atmos speakers yet. He's considering selling them, but if he does end up keeping the Onkyo RZ740,
we must say RZ. He's in the UK.
Oh, that is not true. Or he gets a different receiver that can also do 7.2.4. He's thinking he'd love that full Atmos setup for 4 overhead speakers, but the receiver would only be able to power a single zone if he does that, right? Mm-hmm. He's got patio and kitchen speakers. He's fine with those always playing the same source, so he really needs only one additional zone. And he can already do that with a 7.2 setup in his theater, with the remaining 2 amplifier channels powering zone 2 from his Onkyo. But if he expands his theater to a full Atmos, does he just need another amplifier for his patio and kitchen speaker? Does he need a whole second receiver? I don't know. What does he need?
You just need a separate stereo amplifier, because the zone 2 pre-outs will still work. It only has 9 amplifiers built in, so in terms of powering the speakers itself,
that's a good question, though.
You're absolutely right that if you want to power the speakers all from the receiver, that it can only power 7 in the theater plus 2 more, because it has 9 amplifiers built in. But if you're doing a full 7.2.4 in the theater, it still has zone 2 pre-outs that do still function, and you will have to plug those into a 2-channel amplifier. But you grab a Dayton, $100, and you're ready.
Right. All right, I know we have more questions. I know
many
it's only
more.
been an hour and 45 minutes, but I still have physical therapy to do before I go to bed, and it's 11:27 right now.
We did start very late.
And I know it's my fault that we started late, but you have 4 kids in your house, one of which was screaming himself to sleep, and not because I'm a cried out dad, but because he was losing his mind because his brother put his backpack on top of his teddy bear.
Mm-hmm.
And he's 10 years old, and he was losing it. That boy needed to go to sleep. So, I need to do some physical therapy. So what do we have left, Rob?
Well, I think we got about 10 left here, so let's read through the list. It's going to take as long as answering them. Andy M. Davide, who wrote back, I got to scroll through his images there because I kept them large to be visible.
I apologize, guys, for bumping you to next week, but we'll if I can do an extra long podcast next week, I will.
We'll see what we can do. Chris H, Bill C, Christian, Francis A, who wrote on Facebook, Gib G, Nick B, scrolling down through. Oh, that was it. All right, not too bad. We'll be all right.
All right, let's thank our listeners of the week. We thank Davide for going to avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and our 110 patrons over at patreon.com, including Absorptive Cat PJ and Gib, who increased his monthly donation, and Jason, who's a new patron and has only been listening for a couple of months. Yeah, so Davide, thank you so much for that PayPal donation. Anybody else who wants to do a one-time PayPal donation, come to avrant.com, and over on the right-hand side it says support AVRant. That will take you to PayPal. 110 patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant podcast. Thanks so much, PJ, Gib, and Jason H. Thank you for being 3 of our patrons. Thank you. And we want to thank Ken for talking us up to, I guess, Accessories for Less. Accessories for Less. And the gift card. Thank you, Ken. Really appreciate it. Chris for talking us up to Epyrean. And Lee also for talking us up to Epyrean. That's right. Chris and Lee, thanks so much for talking us up to Epyrean. For AVRant, I'm Tom Andry. And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something. Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.